the recording.
Great.
Probably cut out the first. I think we're recording. Okay. Yeah, we're good. All
All
right.
right.
So let's start with tell me more about who you are and what you guys do.
So my name is Scott Madsen. I'm CEO of Cingo Solutions. We're a cybersecurity, and it's called MDR, but it's a managed detection and response company. So what we do is we're kind of like, are you familiar with what a managed service provider is?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're basically like an MSP kind of on steroids. We have a very heavy cyber focus for security and threat detection. And so we've been doing that for, we started in 2005. We did a bunch of web development type stuff, databases, and ended up in cybersecurity. So
That's awesome. I know because it's a huge need right now. And, I know Nina and I were chatting because last month was Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
it was. Yep.
So tell me about some of like the common mistakes that businesses make that in honor of Cybersecurity Awareness Month that you would love to highlight or at least advise to be like, here's top 5 things that you see all the time that could be easily preventable.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that, the biggest, I would say probably the best thing to do is hire a professional. A lot of this stuff gets so nuanced and so difficult even people who are pretty savvy with IT, it still can get pretty technical as far as, solutions and staying up with the threat. It evolves every month. There's always some new thing that's coming out that you've got to, prepare for. So obviously the best thing to do is to find a professional you like working with and then hire them to do the job. The rest, I would say, keep your network closed. A lot of companies, they'll do certain things to enhance their security, but they leave their network open. They leave ports open in their router. It just makes it a lot easier for people to get in and out for ingress and egress. So make sure those are closed. I would say secure your workstations. Make sure you're running malware, anti-malware, and antivirus type software on it. And then make sure you're doing your updates. That's a big thing that we run into. We are huge Mac fans, which most nerds are, but we love them just because the security is a lot better. It's a lot easier to control the environment. And we really push updates because most of the time that Mac and Windows are doing updates, they're pushing it for security reasons. So we recommend that pretty heavily. And then the rest is train your employees. I think that's the main thing that we're kind of running into right now is that a lot of companies are being breached because of just a lack of employee knowledge about how to conduct themselves on the web. What are threats? How to recognize them and notice them and shut them down. A lot of our clients that we work really in 4 different categories are our main focus. We work in finance, healthcare, professional services, and nonprofits. And so with those guys, a lot of the stuff comes in, they get data entry type people who come in and work for them at a low rate. It's not exactly, figuring out or learning about IT isn't exactly a huge motivation for them. So they're not really being paid to become an expert on anything like that. And so we kind of offer individual employee training that comes standard with membership or with somebody engaging us.
So you mentioned, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit.
Shoot.
So
Yeah.
For us peasants who may not know all the like lingo or verbiage
Sure.
that you speak about, and I'm a little more well-versed than most, but I know a lot of people in my network who, probably don't even understand the difference between like a hack or a breach, or, they're
Sure.
like, they just think IT department is like any nerd who can help work
Yes.
a computer or solve
Yes.
your whole network problem.
Right.
I even get like people who are like, oh, you know how to use a laptop, therefore you can handle like my entire
Right.
digital
Totally.
technology presence. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
Totally.
So let's like boil it back down into a couple things.
Mm-hmm.
So let's first start with, you were saying that a lot of companies are now getting breached because of lack of employee training.
Mm-hmm.
So define the difference between like a breach and a hack and when a company should be concerned.
So anything that breaches your environment, you can call it a hack, you can call it, any other name that you prefer, but it's all the same thing. Somebody getting into your environment and, breaching or penetrating into your employee files, your client data or anything like that, anything that's meant to be secure. Any kind of penetration like that is considered a hack or anything like that. So you can really call it whatever you want. But the big thing with the employee training that is lacking is just the recognition of the threat of something trying to get in. So let's say that you get, and the big one right now is phishing emails and spear phishing emails. So you get an email, it looks really familiar, maybe like from Target, it looks like. It's something that, hey, click on this coupon. It's something that, you feel really comfortable with, and you feel like you know the source. And so you click on it, and then it'll ask for some login credentials or something of that matter, like, hey, give us a login to your online Target stuff. Well, what it is those, a lot of the times right now, those are turning out to not be from Target at all. They're just trying to look for login credentials. Then they use those credentials to go back against your email, against your personal workstation at the company, and a lot of different, and they basically try everything. Your bank account, they'll hit basically anything they can. And when they do, the real kind of difficult thing about it now is that what we're facing, we had a company that this happened to recently, and they actually were breached. And we caught the breach right after it had happened. They had downloaded a program into the environment. We caught it. We shut it down. But the problem is that once they realized that environment was subject to breach or could be breached, for the next 2 or 3 weeks, they just got hammered with emails. I mean, hammered day in, day out. And we were watching them, like a hawk for the whole 3 weeks until it started to die down. But the thing that you watch for is irregularities, and try to help your employees understand that anything irregular, you don't give out personal information, any kind of thing that you click on that's a link. Never download anything unless it's from a known source. Never never put in, especially your login credentials, never put it in anywhere, no matter who's asking for it. Only put it in your workstation. If there's an issue, call IT, call the people you've engaged, the professionals you've engaged to deal with that kind of a situation, and go from there.
So what can a company do? So for example, I run a small boutique agency, and we don't have an IT department. I'm more or less clicking on buttons, figuring it out, or calling, a friend of my network who I'm like, hey, computers better than me, help me. So what can people, because I know there's a lot of us out there, right, that are in this position. So what advice would you give to someone who's in the same position as myself, who may be like a little bit bigger, but they're still not big enough where they need to employ like a full-time IT department? Like, what can that person do?
So there's an entire range of managed service providers out there. It's the good and bad thing. It's a difficult thing for us because we have to kind of explain why we charge such a premium. But for a lot of people, you can engage a managed service provider company that's going to make sure that pretty much you're up and functional. If you have printer issues, or if you're having email issues, or something like that with your tablets or your smartphone or something like that, you'll be able to engage one of those guys for around, depending on the market area. Obviously, in Chicago, maybe a little bit more expensive, but for around $40 per workstation. So per worker, and that's per month. So you can really get quite a bit of service and coverage for a really low rate, as long as you don't need some of the higher end, more sophisticated services. And I'd say for smaller businesses, you're still at risk no matter what. It's just kind of a crummy time to be in business with the internet, because it's such a great tool, and it's amazing for connections and getting people together. But there's also just a lot of guys creeping around in the shadows out there, and you never know when they're going to pop up, and you never know who they're going to target. So I would say that doing that is by far the best thing that a company can do in investing in its future in IT. Even if you can't afford to have a company like ours come in and do it, to have somebody there that you can call and refer to in a time of crisis or emergency. There are a lot of great companies, and it's kind of a growing field. A lot of people are getting out of college and learning they can go into business for themselves. They get 4 or 5 companies as clients, and they can run a great little boutique and have a lot of success there. So I would say definitely do that, because the cost, for the amount of cost that you're putting out for the benefit you receive is phenomenal.
Absolutely. So tell me more about who's your ideal client? I know, shameless sales plug. Tell me more about who are you going after? Who's your target client? And how do you help companies every day?
So we cut our teeth on financial institutions, which isn't the easiest place to cut your teeth. The amount of regulatory oversight and compliance they have to meet is it's tough to bring everything within the new regulation every year. But that's who we really cut our teeth on, is people who work in really difficult regulatory spaces. And with the increase in the oversight, we work well. We've been through multiple state audits in 5 or 6 states across the United States. We have clients in every time zone. And we really, one of our specialties is working with people who are in that situation where they're expanding their business. They're running into some government oversight issues and needing to be in compliance. And we've had a lot of growth in our business through that, just from word of mouth. People are getting into a problem there. But healthcare, we do a lot with doctors and private practices, trying to make sure that people are staying safe. We had a dentist who got into actually in a ransomware situation. He lost a tremendous amount of money. He had 3 offices and ended up having to close 2 of them down afterwards. And it was horrific for him. And you'd think a dentist, I mean, who would go after a dentist? But he has a lot of client data. And so they hit him and got quite a good yield of information. Sorry, I'm getting a call in here. I don't know if you can hear that.
I can. I'm like, I hope you didn't hear all my texts.
No, I haven't heard anything. Thank goodness. So we do that. We also work with professional service firms. We work a lot with accountants, insurance salesmen, anybody who's really working with client data that is stored on site or even in a cloud environment. People who touch, that kind of high risk data, that's who we specialize in. And so again, it kind of comes at a higher price. We run a specific security protocol. A lot of this may be like way overkill and technically I'm probably putting everybody to sleep, but it's just it's the details of what we do that make us valuable and make our offering really positive for the people who are in those situations. And so we try to focus on guys who are dealing with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, it's interesting that you bring up a dentist practice because, you're right. Like, who would think like someone would go after a dentist practice? But, at the same time, in the era of digital and, all the patient data is moving towards the cloud and, everyone's trying to figure out data interoperability and, to move things towards IoT, like you become vulnerable at that point where you might not have been before. So it's really interesting you bring that up. And I think that's something, for everyone to be aware of, that like where traditionally you might not have been vulnerable, like you might be now, and you really have to pay attention to how you might be vulnerable.
Yeah. Well, so how we build kind of our services outline is based on a survey done by a company called Net Diligence, and they put out a cybersecurity or cyber threat survey every year. So the 2017 survey is kind of what we built a lot of it. You can go on our website at cingo.solutions, and there's a lot of information. Even if you don't use our company, there's a lot of information on there about,
How do you spell Cingo?
CINGO.
All right. It's like bingo.
Like bingo with the C. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Are we going to start chanting?
Yeah, we could. I did this morning with my little girls. So I'm well practiced in the bingo. But so they come out, and what they do is they take actuarial data. So information from insurance agencies that have actually paid out on breach claims. And so they base that on per industry. And so that's what we've really looked at, is saying who's the most at risk, who's getting hit, when are they getting hit in their growth curve, how, specifically there's a lot of different ways that you can, like with accountants, there's, W-2 fraud's a big thing where people come in and file a tax return in your name before you get a chance to, and they file it for way over, they get a huge return, and then you get stuck with the bill later working it out when they say we overpaid you. And so it's just a nightmare. But so they go through and kind of break it down and try to figure out where the risk is and for who.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2017 Net Diligence survey, they said that most, every company that sells under $2 million in revenue will experience a breach once every 5 years.
Wow.
It's not once in the life of the company or anything like that. They say you'll experience a breach attempt every single 5 years. And that was old. The Net Diligence 2018 survey just came out a little while ago, and they said that cybersecurity cyber breaches have tripled since 2015.
Wow.
160%.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and those are successful breaches. And it's crazy because the confidence of CEOs is at an all-time high. There's 97% of people think that they've done enough to save their company from breach, and yet they're still increasing in the breaches. So obviously we're misdiagnosing or misunderstanding the threat that we're looking at. So
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes to show the facade we paint every day of thinking like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like we're safe, we're
Yeah.
secure. And it's that happy song and
Yeah.
dance. And then, the internet trolls come in and they're like,
That's
nope.
right.
Like, no,
Yeah,
you're not.
absolutely. Well, it's funny. There's an old saying that says that, if you're getting chased by a bear, you don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than the other guy.
Yes.
But it's kind of getting to the point where, everybody gets their turn with this stuff. And it's a sad thing when you're not prepared, because it really, we've had companies that we've met afterwards, unfortunately, but it's put them out of business. I mean, they've lost employees, have lost their jobs. And the owners have been liable for certain things that,
Wow.
I'm not an attorney, so I can't go into what the liability is, but I do know that, they end up holding a lot more than they had considered they ever could in a situation like this, which is why they don't give it a lot of the attention that it probably could and should need.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know we only have a couple of minutes left, so let's switch to a fun topic. Let's talk about Cyber Monday. So I guess
Okay.
we'll take it in two tracks. The first being like, what are maybe some simple things that companies can do last minute to prepare themselves from Cyber Monday? And also, what are your favorite gadgets to buy on Cyber Monday?
I think that, the biggest thing that companies can do, again, it really comes down. So what we do, we kind of take a holistic approach to security, where we look at the entire company and we look at, how can we prevent, instead of looking at individual threats. I mean, you kind of get on their turf. We want to stay on our turf and build a fortress around the company, make sure that the company is secure. And then we try to monitor who comes in and out of the gate. I think with Cyber Monday, the best thing that a company can do is really have a good offense. You just try to create a boundary or a very stable environment around, whether you're using, if you're backing up in the cloud, or if you're doing merchant services, or whatever it is you're doing, however your data is flowing through Cyber Monday, just make sure you're with very reputable sources. We recommend, it's good to take a risk on small business. I'm not saying that, but it's a lot better, especially when you're talking about data storage. That small businesses just don't have the infrastructure of like Google or AWS networks. It's not there yet. And so I would say make sure you're with a really good reputable source, who you have a good person that you can call in, and you have some sort of familiarity with the way that they do with how they do business. And then make sure that that the employees are aware that they're on guard, and making sure that they're not making any silly decisions. So,
That's great advice. So what's your favorite gadgets?
Yeah, as far as gadgets go, I'm an Apple nerd, so anything new Apple is good. But I've got my eye on an iPhone Watch 4 that it measures heartbeat, and hopefully it'll get me back in shape. So we'll see how that goes.
All right, we'll check in a few months to see.
Yes.
We'll be like, hey Scott, how's your? I guess at that point, New Year's resolutions, right?
Yeah, it will probably be the same and disappointing, but I'll do my best. So.
Well, we'll check in, and I'm sure my LinkedIn audience will keep you accountable.
That sounds great. I appreciate it, Taylor.
All right, thanks, Scott. It was great chatting with you, and
You as well.
Yeah, have a great weekend. We'll check in soon.
That sounds great. Thanks, Taylor. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.